In 1977, a small factory in Colvin, Leicester got to work on something that would change the lives of countless people. Little did they realise that people were still caring enough 40 years later to sit and listen to a guy waffle on about that product. This is the Star Wars Toy Podcast. Hello there, and welcome to episode 34 of the Star Wars Toy Podcast. I'm your host, Darth Mark, and on this week's show, I'm going to be talking about the Power of the Force 2 line. But before that, let's have a bit of this.
The Star Wars Tracker Report.
This is the market activity for the 15th of February through to the 21st of February. And all in all, there was 764 items sold with a total of £47,461. Starting with the top 5 accessories. At number 5, we have an ATL Interceptor, Kenner Droids A on Droids packaging, sold in the United States for $449. Number 4, we have a Dagobah action playset, Kenner Empire Strikes Back A Dagobah Scene, sold in the United States for $500. That must have been sealed for that price. At number 3, we have a Death Star, a Tall Toys Loose Death Star, sold in Australia for $800 Australian dollars. And that, of course, is the Palitoy cardboard version of the Death Star playset. At number 2, we have an AT-ST UKG 70, Kenner Empire Strikes Back A Hoth Snow Scene, sold in the United Kingdom for £500. It's not often you see a sealed Scoutwalker, but it is graded. It's the UKG 70, so for £500, I think played over the odds for that, but who am I to say? At number 1, we have an Imperial Shuttle, my favourite, Kenner Return of the Jedi A Emperor Arrival Scene, sold in the United Kingdom for £715. That's a bargain. On to the top 5 loose figures now. At number 5, we have a C-3PO Droids version, sold in Australia for $680 Australian dollars. Number 4, a Blue Snaggletooth No Dent AFA 80, sold in the United States for $500. Number 3, we have a Vinyl Cape Jawa, sold in the United Kingdom for £405, so somebody's got a bargain there. Number 2, we have another Vinyl Cape Jawa, UKG 80, sold in Germany this time for €1,001. That's more like the usual price we see for one of these little fellas. Number 1, we have a Boba Fett AFA 80 Plus, a Lily Leddy version, sold in the United States for $5,711. Wow. So finally, on to the top 5 mock figures, or mint on card figures, if you're a proper collector. Number 5, we have Princess Leia Organa AFA 80 on a Kenner Empire Strikes Back 41C card, sold in the United States for $707. And number 4, we have an R2-D2 Solid Dome on a Kenner Star Wars 12C, and that one was sold in the United States for $800. Number 3, we have a C-3PO AFA 85 on a Kenner Star Wars 20A card, sold in the United States for $800. Number 2, we have a Boba Fett AFA 75Y on a Kenner Return of the Jedi 77A card, and that was sold in Germany for €825. And finally, at number 1, we have a Boba Fett, but this is a Droids 12A version of Boba Fett, and that was sold in the United States for $1,725. So that's your Star Wars tracker for this week. I did get some feedback this week about the tracker, and they apparently liked it. So I did ask a few weeks ago if you liked it. I don't know if you like it. I don't get much feedback about this podcast. I would like to get a lot more and get some questions, because I want to be informative, but I want to be entertaining too. So anything that you want to hear or you want not to hear, let me know. And don't forget, if you would like this Star Wars tracker yourself, head out to www.starwarstracker.com.
Penny for your thoughts.
So as I said at the beginning of the podcast, this week I'm going to be talking about the Power of the Force 2 line. Now, I don't want to delve too deeply into these figures, as I've not done the Return of the Jedi or the Power of the Force original 1985 line, as well as the droids and Ewoks. So I'm not going to be reviewing each figure. I might just list each one very quickly. But I just want to tell you the story of the Power of the Force 2 line and how it came about, and my own personal story about the dark times. 1985, I sold all my Star Wars figures. I've told you this before, for 18 figures, unfortunately. I was growing up. I was 15 at the time. Yeah, 18 was a bit more mature than Star Wars at that time. Star Wars had finished. Nothing new was coming out. I'd gone on to board games, table football, Subbuteo table football. I got role-playing games. I had a lot of Star Trek role-playing games. I didn't play Dungeons and Dragons as much. It was just mainly Star Wars and Star Trek. I think it's the West End Games that was the only thing that actually came out around that time. And I played a lot of that. I can actually remember in about 1990 that there was news of a new Star Wars trilogy coming out, or at least one movie. And I did actually start writing a book about the Jedi. Unfortunately, we didn't know quite a lot about the Jedi back then. I saw a book this week, actually, about the Jedi Path. And I thought, well, that is the book I should have written in 1990. And Star Wars still had a big influence over my life, even though there was nothing there. I had the VHSs of Return of the Jedi and Empire Strikes Back, and would watch them often. There were, of course, other franchises that took my attention, Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, Batman, around that time. But I was always known as the person that liked Star Wars. And I actually remember the first Saturday that I went into Leeds. I had a job on a Saturday morning, just doing a few odd jobs. I worked all week, and the Saturday was just cleaning the vans and things like that. I got a bit of extra cash. So straight afterwards, I go straight into Leeds, go to the comic store, buy lots of comics, a lot of Batman at the time. Then I remember seeing the Star Wars book. I didn't know anything about it because there was no internet. We didn't know anything that was coming out. And it was Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire. Of course, I bought it straight away. I read it straight away. Waited for the next one the next year, and the next one, I think it was the year after. But that's all we got in the dark times. We've got the Bendhams, which, again, I might talk about if I really get desperate for things to talk about, but I doubt it. But by the time that the Power of the Force 2 line come out, I was married and had a child on the way. Yeah, I could have pretended that I was buying them for my son, but I did that a bit later on. But I kind of got sidetracked. I think it was around the time that Star Trek The Next Generation was out, and I was buying VHSs of that, as it wasn't on TV in UK. And we got the VHSs out once a month, I think they came out. So I was buying those, and I was more into the Star Trek at the time. So it was kind of going to Toys R Us with my son, and they passed me by for some reason. And to be honest with you, my first wife wasn't very impressed with me liking these kind of things. But obviously when I got my shop and I got back into Star Wars due to my second wife, who encouraged me to like Star Wars again. And obviously I got my shop, so I had to find out and read up all about Power of the Force 2. I've learnt a lot since then. I have had a lot of these figures. It's funny that I had more Episode 1 figures than the Power of the Force 2 line at that time, which, I mean, it merged into it eventually with the Comtech chip figures. And now is the official story of the Power of Force 2 line. So in 1995, the much anticipated return of Star Wars toys and action figures had arrived as Kenner, now a division of Hasbro, released a new collection they would dub the Power of the Force 2. The original Power of the Force was released in 1985 with special collector coins, and it had been 12 years since the release of Return of the Jedi and 10 years since the last collection of Star Wars toys had been on the store shelves. The new line features brand new packaging and improved sculpts from the predecessors. With the re-release of the Star Wars Special Editions in 1997, George Lucas' timeless myth had come full circle and reintroduced itself into a new generation of fans and collectors. The line that was first introduced with the red lightsaber on the card in 1995, and in 1997 with the release of the special editions, the card and saber colour was changed to green. A special holofoil sticker was also included to commemorate the 20th anniversary of Star Wars. Since then, Hasbro Kenner has included various add-ons in its packaging. The Freeze Flame slides featured a cell slide of a particular movie scene with a character in it. And these slides themselves were considered as collector's items, and Kenner produced both a viewer, which was modelled after Luke's binoculars in A New Hope, and a binder to hold the slides. The flashback cards, released in the late 1988, were a prelude to the upcoming release of The Phantom Menace. The flashback cards featured a picture of the character in the classic trilogy. When a tab was pulled, a picture of the related character from the new prequels appeared. With the advent of the Comtech technology, introduced a new Episode 1 toy line. The Power of the Force 2 line was adopted the Comtech chips in 1999. Now these new figures can recite the classic lines we have all come to know from the films. So with the knowledge of the new films coming out and the re-release of the special editions, Hasbro decided to re-release all the figures with different sculpts of each character. Now these new sculpts didn't come without issues. They look like they'd been working out with He-Man. Somebody Mattel had come over and sculpted these. Each character now had massive biceps, pecs and thighs. The designers must have really thought that that's what the kids wanted in those dark days. But not only were they pumped up, the sculpts of the faces were pretty poor. They're really ugly, look like they've been melted, some of them. Especially the Luke. The Luke looks a bit gormless, really. Ben looks like Ricky Gervais when he's in the bath. And I'm sure I don't need to mention Monkey Face Leia. There were, of course, some good points about these figures. The weapon sculpts were a lot better. R2 and 3PO had better detailing. 3PO now had some wiring on his torso, and R2 had his third leg. Although I don't know what they did with R5D4, with that rocket mechanism. I don't know what that was about. But another good thing is that we got figures that we never got on the vintage line, like Grand Moff Tarkin, Slave Leia, Corindon, and Dagobah Luke. We also got some expanded universe figures. Prince Caesar, Luke in Imperial Guard disguise, Chewie in his bounty hunter disguise, and actual Dash Rengar, all from the Shadows of the Empire. And we later got one of my favourite characters, Mara Jade. Another thing that Hasbro brought back was the mail-away promotions. We finally got a Han Solo in Stormtrooper disguised, and that was from a cereal giveaway. We got a Spirit of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I remember getting that through the trilogy VHS box set. Another first was the Bo-Mar Monk. That was the first internet mail-away. And that's a video that the Junkman has just done on YouTube. So going back to the weapons, I just want to talk about the lightsabers. Of course, the Ben, the Luke and the Vader all came with realistic looking lightsabers with transparent blades. The blades of the early lightsabers accessories were a bit too long and a tendency to droop at the end. I know that feeling. And the length was shortened in subsequent assortments. Now, that created a big thing in collecting around that time. The trays that the figures came in were designed for the long lightsabers. So collectors were looking for the long lightsaber trays with the short lightsabers. And as these figures came initially on the red lightsaber cards, and then they changed to the green lightsaber cards, you could get whole different variations of these carded figures. And you can still find them today. One look on eBay or in your local vintage shop, vintage toy shop, whatever, antique shop. You'll find these figures still on the cards, and probably for a very reasonable price. So if you find yourself not being able to afford the vintage line, the loose line, it's not that expensive, to be honest with you, unless you want them complete. This may be the way into Star Wars collecting for you. Hasbro did follow up with a deluxe line and a 12-inch line. They brought out movie scene sets and creatures. I actually reviewed the Steve Sansweet archive book this week on YouTube, and I was looking through it, funnily enough, and I saw the probe droid, which I'd never seen before. I thought, well, you never see one of those. So I was on eBay the same day, and lo and behold, I found one and I bought it. I've done a video on that too, so that's up for you to watch. Of course, that will not be opened, but I will be doing a comparison video for when I get my Black Series Probe Droid, hopefully. Now, of course, the line would not be complete without vehicles, and they re-released nearly all the vehicles from the same moulds, with a few added extras. The X-Wing got lights and sound, as did the TIE Fighter. The Land Speeder was redone, and the Millennium Falcon was the same, exact same mould, just had a couple of lights at the front and a better sound effect. But it was the same playset cum vehicle that we loved. Just be careful if you're out and about and you're looking at these Millennium Falcons and you're thinking it's a vintage one. You can be easily fooled if you don't know what you're looking for. They redid the Skywalker and the speeder bike, the Snowspeeder Slave One, Darth Vader's TIE Fighter, and of course the AT-AT. The chin guns still lit up, but they were fixed, and they also had a sound effect. Now, the last vehicle I'm going to mention is the A-Wing. So, you know about the A-Wing. It came late in the line, on the droids line. So this one was the exact same sculpt, and it's just something you've got to look out for when you're out and about. If you see a loose one, just check it and see if it's Battle of the Force 2 or original vintage line. I once picked one up in a charity store, and I wasn't 100% sure, but it was only £15, so I bought it anyway, thinking that £15 it's going to be a Power of the Force 2 version, and it was, but it was really nice to have. So I'm going to round off the story of the Power of the Force 2 with a review of the book that I do believe is probably one of the best for Power of the Force 2. It came out in 1999, just as the Power of the Force 2 line was hitting its peak, and I've already mentioned that it's Steve Sansweet's action figure archive. Now, as I said, I've already done a video on the look-through of this book. You can see that video on my YouTube channel, which is in the show notes. But if you want to do a quick search, it's Blue Harvest Vintage Toys. I know the search is always a bit crap, so as I said, the link is in the show notes. And I'm going to start with reading the note that Steve Sansweet puts at the beginning of the book, talking about this book. By the mid-1980s, Star Wars fandom was at an all-time low. The sale of Star Wars collectibles has also hit a slump. Very little new merchandise of any kind available. My good friend, Emi Takada, whom I met in 1985, remembers going to toy and model shows in Japan and introducing himself as a Star Wars expert. He almost always got the same reaction: Star Wars? My kid had all those toys. Or remember those little figures? I had them all. That instant nostalgia, while we didn't realise it at the time, would help lead the phenomenal success of the Star Wars Trilogy Special Edition a dozen years later, and the great anticipation of the long awaited prequels. Okay. Because of the incredible merchandising success of the original Star Wars films in the late 1970s and 1980s, many people associated the collectibles, especially the ubiquitous Kenner 3¾ action figures, with the films. In fact, MRI and I had started our friendship by trading the toys, and I'm fairly convinced that the kids playing with some of the 250 million action figures that were produced over 80 years were one of the reasons why the continued strength of the Star Wars phenomena. In recent years, I had become more involved in collecting Star Wars memorabilia, started writing books about it, and even worked with some of the Lucasfilm licensees. And MRI too, in fact, had personal business cards read Star Wars Servant, since he was one of the public servants as a public high school teacher. A few years ago, MRI and a fellow enthusiast and sculptor, C.G. Takahashi, compiled a magnificent volume, The Star Wars Chronicles, a deluxe photo book that takes readers through every aspect of the Star Wars universe, both on-screen and behind the scenes. In 1994, as they were working on the book, Seiji visited the Tokyo Toy Fair and saw early prototypes for a brand new yet very familiar toy line. The rumours he saw were true. The hugely successful Star Wars action figure line from Kenner, now unit of the giant Hasbro Inc., was going to be revived in a new assortment of characters from the classic films, sculpted with a detail and accuracy that will bring the 21-year-old toys into the 1990s. In 1997, a Japanese publisher asked Emery and Seiji to take the same approach as they did with the breakthrough Star Wars Chronicles and apply it to the action figures and related toys from George Lucas's dazzling trilogy. Since the toys were modelled after the characters and the vehicles found in the Star Wars films, they wanted to provide a book that would show the detail of the toys and how closely they were modelled after the accurate film costumes and hardware. They also believed it was important to include the new minted figures as well as the vintage ones. Many collectors of the new action figure line weren't around at the original theatrical release of the Star Wars trilogy, yet they were among the biggest fans, and they have started to take an interest in the vintage toys dating back some 20 years. Likewise, many of the fans who had collected in the 1970s and 1980s were now returning to the hobby and buying the current toys. This book, then, is an attempt to satisfy fans of both old and new. I'll admit I was initially dubious. In 1996, Imran Sajjad made several field trips to my house in Los Angeles to do some initial photography and research. I know we would find them in the morning fast asleep on the floor in one of the toy rooms. Heaven. Action figures and vehicles sprawled all over the place. Finally, MI and a representative from Neko Publishing had a chance to present their idea to Lucasfilm, and all systems would go. Quickly. They spent several days poring through the outtake files of the Lucas Photo Archive. Meanwhile, 4 photographers, 1 in Los Angeles and 3 in Tokyo, began taking photos of the toys and their packaging. With the help of some of the top US collectors, my archival assistant, Josh Ling, the book quickly took shape. Because of the prior business arrangements, Neko had scheduled the MOOC, a particular Japanese cross between magazine and book, for publication in December 1997. Giving the authors, photographers, designers and printers with just a few months to put it together, a very complicated project. Lucasfilm editor Alan Korsh, photograph assistant Cara Evangelista, and I speeded up the process on this side of the Pacific. That the authors succeeded is evidence in these pages, which Joss and I have adapted for the English-speaking readers. Chronicle Books, which published the American version of this book, expressed interest in what had come to be called Star Wars: The Action Figure Archive. After some initial delays with the English-language edition, we had all decided that it was important to add a new section that would update the book and the latest Hasbro Kenner creations. Feast your eyes, then, on a book with a double dose of wonderment. First, the unparalleled universe that George Lucas created, and second, the miniature version from the Kenner and Hasbro designers, engineers, and marketers. The one that let the world's children actually become part of that galaxy far, far away. And all in all, I'm very impressed by this book. I'm really glad I bought it. I don't know why I didn't buy it a long time ago. I have that many action figure guidebooks. I have the Kellerman. I've got a little price guide that I take with me everywhere. Totally out of date now. It's from 2005. But it just gives you a random idea of what to expect and the variations and things like that. But this action figure archive book is just so well researched. It's even got photos of the actors in their outfits and uniforms that Kenner were probably given back in the day to make these figures. Each figure has a picture of the accessory it comes with, and the card back it goes on, and even the index at the back is more comprehensive than you'd get in most books. For example, the original Luke Skywalker, Star Wars 12-back photo on Tatooine, telescoping saber, yellow hair. Star Wars 12-back photo on Tatooine, yellow hair. Other Star Wars card, Tatooine, yellow hair. Empire Strikes Back card, Tatooine, yellow or brown hair. Return of the Jedi card, Tatooine, yellow or brown hair. Return of the Jedi card, Gunport, yellow or brown hair. And Tri-Logo card, Gunport, yellow or brown hair. And he does that for every figure. So that's certainly going to be invaluable for me. And it was a lot cheaper than the Kellerman, put it that way. I thoroughly recommend this book for vintage collectors, as well as Power of the Force 2 collectors.
Somebody once told me the world is gonna throw me.
Some interesting new Black Series rumours have turned up after the New York Toy Fair. In all, 15 new Black Series figures were listed on the Walmart app, and they are the Rogue One Stormtrooper, the Episode 5 Darth Vader, a Camino Trooper, a Clone Trooper, Episode 6 Han Solo, Cad Bane. Episode 6 Leia, a Mandalorian Incinerator Trooper. Episode 5 Hoth Rebel Trooper, which is probably just a repack from the 40th anniversary line. And episode 6 Admiral Akbar at last. A T-Bow. Ewoks at last. And the episode 5 Snowspeeder Luke. Again, a repack from the 40th anniversary. There is also an episode 6 Luke Skywalker, and I think the Han, Leia and Luke will be the Endor gear versions. There's a couple of other figures that have code names of Hook 2, which is probably the Mandalorian in Beskar armor, and Sawyer, which is Moff Gideon. Something else that also came out from a shelf tag on a Toys R Us in Canada that confirms the rumour of the upcoming Deluxe Black Series Luke Skywalker, Dagobah and Yoda. There's no word of availability, but it's thought to be a fan channel release. Hasbro certainly seem to be putting a lot into the Black Series lines lately, and it's going to be hard to keep up with those. The vintage collection does seem to have trailed off quite a bit. There was only 2 that was shown at the Toy Fair, and there's not been a lot of news about those. And obviously with the Black Series Snowspeeder coming out, I wonder if they're trailing away from the vintage collection. Maybe it's not doing as well as I thought, and putting all their eggs in one basket with the Black Series, which wouldn't be a bad thing for my point of view, because I'm not a vintage collection collector. I'm a vintage collector and a Black Series collector. Get in touch with me if you think I'm wrong. If you collect these vintage collections, I know a lot of people do. And indeed, if you want me to talk about them, if you want to come on and talk about them and tell the listeners why they should start collecting the vintage collection. Again, my email is in the show notes. It's blueharvesttoys@gmail.com. But you can also hit me up on Twitter at Star Wars Toy Pod. I'm also on YouTube, putting videos up most days now of reviews of the things I'm picking up. And it's not just Star Wars, I'm branching out quite a bit into other properties. So if you enjoy this podcast and my YouTube channel, just like it, share it out, tell everybody about it. Put a review up on Apple Podcasts, that would really help. And if you do put a review up on Apple Podcasts, I'll read it out, even if it's a 1-star bad review. I don't mind. Also, check out my TeePublic store. That's been doing pretty well lately. And if you fancy helping me out create this show, just head over to Patreon. I write articles from time to time over there. Sometimes put early releases and outtakes on there. Even if you give me $1 a month, that would really help me out, as I'd like to do this daily again. I used to do 15-minute daily podcasts. Well, what I'd really like to do is do a 15-minute news podcast a day, and then a weekly vintage show maybe. Keep the show separate, modern and vintage. So at the moment I'm paying Lipsing $15 a month, and it allows me to do half an hour shows per week. I don't know, you might not like to hear any more of my voice. Half an hour a week might be enough for you. Anyway, thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. And may the toys be with you.
One more round, friend, then homeward bound, friend. Don't forget me in your dreams. Just one more song, friend, and then so long, friend. The nights get shorter, it seems. Just one more rhyme, friend. Yes, it's a crime, friend. But you know time, friend. Time can fly. So it's good night, friend. Good night, but not goodbye.